Welcome to the Ella Meeples playthrough of Bottom of the Ninth, a dice game about baseball's ninth inning when everything comes down to the wire. In the solo game for Bottom of the Ninth, you manage a team of batters. Now this is just a sample team that I've picked out. There are way more batters in the game as well as in expansions and promotions. Each batter has a position. You can't have more than one position of batter on your team. So for instance, I couldn't have two outfielders, but I could have an outfielder and a right fielder and a left fielder. I couldn't have two first bases, but I could have a first base and a second base. Every batter has on the back of their card a guide to how to use their special powers. Some of them also have traits that give them additional special powers that don't depend on guessing the two components of the pitch correctly. Some team cards are special, like Mr. Fixer here. He's actually a support character. You can only have one support character on your team, but like for batters, there are a number of support characters that you can choose from promotions and expansions. Every one of these guys comes with a special power for the home team, which is the batters, and the away team, which is the pitchers. In the solo game, you will only look at the home row because you are always the home team, i.e. the batters. Your batters will be facing off against a random selection of pitchers. Every pitcher has their position as pitcher. They have what's called an ace pitch, which is their special pitch that gives them an advantage over the batter. Some of them also have traits that allow them to, for instance, be fatigued less. We will cover fatigue as we go through the playthrough of the game. Every scenario in a solo game features two components. The first is a situation card. This tells you the number of players on base, in which case we have one player on first base. It tells you the number of outs that you start out with. In this case, you start with one out, and it tells you the score. So in this case, we'd only have to score 1 point in order to win the game. We also have up to 11 innings to win this game. The second component of a scenario is the randomly chosen effect. The effect is in the upper part of the card. We'll talk about the lower part of the card later when we cover how the game plays. But the upper part of the card takes effect for the game, and some of them will actually have a condition that will discard them, but they generally are in effect for the entire game. So there are a bunch of these situation cards and a bunch of these effect cards as well. They not only form the situation and effect for your game, but the rest of them that you aren't using for that purpose will be the pitcher deck. The pitcher deck serves, in the case of the solo game, as a sort of substitute for the human pitcher. In this case, for instance, in the lower part of the card, the pitcher would be throwing a pitch that was high and inside. In this case, the pitcher would throw a pitch that was low and inside. There are also special cards that don't tell you what the pitch is exactly, but basically they have special effects. For instance, this gives the pitcher 3 relief, and we draw the next card. There's also cards like batter predicts both incorrectly, just to play with the probabilities of the pitcher deck a little bit. Pitcher selects their ace pitch, and so on and so forth. So we shuffle these, and they form our pitcher deck, which we place on the fatigue space. We have a number of runner meeples, and we have the catcher meeple, which is sort of a promo perk that doesn't really do anything, but you know, it's kind of nice just to have. So in the game, we will be rolling these dice. The pitcher rolls the 2 white dice, and the batter rolls the red die. We'll cover how this works in the main game itself. So for the solo campaign, we always start out with the home opener. With the home opener, we also randomly choose an effect from the pitcher deck. In this case, we'll just go ahead and use Scorcher, since it's the simplest effect. We set up the number of outs, so we've got 1 out, and we set up the base players, which in this case is 1 player on first base. Home opener, we also have a little guide on how the pitcher AI will modify its pitch based on the values of the dice that it rolls. This guide is only for abilities that the pitcher can actually do. We'll cover this in more detail later on. So, bottom of the 9th comes with these collection card. It also serves on the back as a guide to how to interpret the results of the pitcher die versus the strike die. We've got our random pile of pitchers. We've got our support. We've got our team of batters. We place the little, this looks like a strip of gum. Don't eat it. It's not really a strip of gum. And we place it under him. We use this to track the strikes and the balls. We also have these tokens, which are 2-sided. The high versus low, the inside versus away. These are used to indicate your guess of how the pitcher will pitch. So we are going to try to guess what our pitcher, B. Weaver, is going to pitch. Now his ace pitch is high and inside. If he pitches this pitch, most of the time the special ability will go off with it, and it carries a disadvantage for the batter, of course. If you guess that it was high and outside, and he still pitched high and inside, this would still go off. Mike has a special MVP ability called Hit and Run, which we'll explain in a bit. But notice that his little table contains red dots, white dots, red plus white dot, and the MVP row. So what happens with the red and white dots? Well, every pitch, you are going to guess whether it is low or high, and also guess whether it's away or inside. So if Mike guessed low and inside, and both of his guesses were correct, that's a red dot and a white dot. So he gets the red plus white dot ability. And this row differs from batter to batter. If he only guessed the red part correctly, he gets the ability in the red dot row. If he only guessed the white part ability, he gets the dot in the white row. And usually it's the case that if you guess both correctly, you can use the star to execute your MVP special action. The pitcher kind of works the same way, except he works on the dots that you guess incorrectly. So if you guessed low and the pitcher pitched high, he would get the red dot instead, and he would be able to add +1 or -1 to the control die, which we'll cover in a bit. If you guess the white dot wrong, he gets the white dot ability. If you guess both wrong, he gets the red plus white dot ability, which differs from pitcher to pitcher. And the special ace pitch happens if he pitches the high and inside, for instance. If he pitches that and you don't guess it completely, the special ability goes off. If you guessed only one part correctly and he pitched his ace pitch, the special ability also goes off. So you need to guess both when it comes to the ace pitch in order to stop the ace pitch ability from firing. Notice that there are advantages to guessing the pitch correctly. It's just sort of a calculated risk. Do you try to work out what probabilities are left in the pitcher deck and try to get a good guess? Or do you always guess the ace pitch in the hopes that you stop it in case it happens? Doing that all the time is actually a losing proposition. The best way to play this game is to think about what's in the pitcher deck at the current time. So, because this is the first pitch of the game and we don't have any information, well, we have some information, but we don't have a lot of information about what's left in the pitcher's deck and what might come up from there, we are going to guess the ace pitch. The ace pitch has a slightly higher probability of being thrown, and it has a somewhat worse effect if you don't guess it correctly. So we are going to guess the ace pitch. In other words, for B. Weaver, that's high and inside. We'll see whether we get this correctly or not. So now we draw from the pitcher deck. The pitcher pitches low and away. So we got it completely wrong. So since we got it completely wrong, we place the tokens with the pitcher instead, flipping them over to show what the pitcher actually pitched. Because the pitcher pitched low and away and not high and inside, he doesn't get the ace pitch ability. However, he does get the red plus white ability. He can't use a red ability and then a white ability. He must use the red plus white ability. The same thing applies for the batter. The pitcher rolls 2 dice. The first is called the pitch die, and it indicates where the pitch eventually ends up in relation to the batter. The control die, on the other hand, is a regular D6, and it gives a target for the batter to attempt to hit. B. Weaver now rolls his dice, and he gets a control 5. Let's refer to the table of pitcher mitigation. Now, the pitcher can't actually do things that they aren't able to do. Like, for instance, if the pitcher did not get the red dot ability, he would not be able to add plus or minus 1 to the control. If he did not get the white ability, he would not be able to actually re-roll the pitcher die. And if he didn't actually do high and inside as the pitch, he doesn't get the ace ability. So that's something to keep in mind when looking at the mitigation table. So we notice that part of the mitigation table says, re-roll and modify C pitches as needed to obtain C1 or C6. Now the triangle is probably, the triangle with a C inside is the hardest pitch for players to deal with, because let's refer to this table here. With a C pitch, you have to match the control die exactly in order to make contact. For a ball, you have to either be equal to or lower than the control. And for a strike type of pitch, you have to be higher than the control. If you match the control, you get a foul, which is basically a strike. There are additional directions for crushing the ball, and we'll cover those as we get to it in the game. So in this case, we have both the red and the white dot, but we don't have the ace pitch. So what does red plus white get us? Well, it says do the red dot times 2 or do the white dot times 2. The red dot says +1 or -1 to the control die. The white dot says re-roll the pitcher die. Re-roll any of the pitcher dies. but you can only re-roll one of them. So it says that we want to obtain C1 or C6. Well, we're very far away from C1, but we're very close to C6. So we are going to use the red dot. We could use it twice, but we only need to use it once to bring the control die up to 6. So now the batter needs to match 6, or else he'll have a strike against him. And it's 3 strikes, you're out. So let's roll these strike die. Yeah, that was a strike. That was definitely not a 6. So we move to the next pitch. Now notice that this does not refresh between pitches, so now the probabilities are reduced further. When a pitcher finishes with a batter, the pitcher only gets a few cards from the discard pile back into the deck. So as the game wears on, the pitcher becomes more and more tired, and he throws less and less wild pitches. So you'll be able to better predict what he'll be doing. Low and away is slightly less probable now, so let's decide to guess the ace pitch again. High and inside. We draw high and away. High and away. So that means we guessed 1 correctly. So the pitcher can only re-roll a die. He can't execute the special ability because he didn't pitch it high and inside, he pitched it high and away. So that means that he only gets the white dot row. So let's see what happens when we roll the dice. We have a ball and a 4. When we look at the mitigation table, we see that if we have a ball that is a 4 to 6 with the control, we want to re-roll the pitch die if possible. So we are going to re-roll this die because we have the ability to re-roll dice because we got a white dot. So we're going to re-roll this, and it's still a ball. So now the batter needs to hit below or equal to this ball to get a ball. So because he has the red token, he can add +1 or -1 to the swing die. I was calling it the strike die. It's actually the swing die. So there we go. We'll roll it. And he rolls a 4 exactly, so that is a ball. 4 balls, and he walks to the next space. If he can just manage to match any balls that come at him, or to hit any strikes or contacts with the red triangle towards him, then he can move to first base. Hopefully. That involves some luck as well. So now, next pitch, we're going to guess low and inside just for fun. Draw a card. So fatigue 2, draw again. So that means the pitcher gets really tired. So we draw 2 cards. And discard them. And we draw again. Okay. So 3 relief means that the pitcher actually gets some cards back into the deck, just to mess with us. In this case, we've got 3 relief. We actually take the 3 cards from the bottom of the fatigue, discard. We shuffle them into the main deck. We draw low and inside, so we guessed both correctly, which is nice, because now the pitcher can't actually modify their roll at all. And they don't have any ace pitch, and we guessed it both correctly, so even if they had their ace pitch, we stopped that ability from firing. So, low and inside. Choose any two. So we can choose from three options. Star row, which is the MVP ability, white row, which is the white dot ability, and the red dot ability, and we can choose any two of them. So we could, for instance, choose the red dot and the MVP ability, or we could choose the red dot and the white dot, or you get the idea. We can't choose MVP twice, unfortunately, so there you have it, low and inside. So now the pitcher rolls and they can't modify the die roll at all. B4. So Mike Fitz, the MVP ability is hit and run. Mike may not re-roll. Lead runner, which would be Mike, gets one unopposed roll during the run phase. Well, unfortunately, a ball is not going to become a strike of any type, not going to become a contact of any type, excuse me. So he is going to use the red. Actually, he doesn't need to use any abilities because he matched the ball control die. So yeah, let's move to the next one. We're going to guess high and inside the ace pitch, low and away. So I got it totally wrong. So low and away. So the pitcher rolls, strike, and a 5. So having to bat higher than a strike means that the swing die needs to be a 6. Now, if we've got an S 4 to 6, we want to modify it to make it harder. So we've got both the red dot and the white dot. So the red dot says that we can modify the control by 1. So we do that. So now it's actually an automatic strike at this point because Mike Fitz can't do anything to the swing die. So that factor's out of play. So he's going to actually, all he can do is take the strike because even if he matched it, it would be a foul. Now, if he had a special ability relating to foul balls, he could take advantage of that, but he doesn't. So let's go and give him a strike. So one more strike and he's out. We are still going to guess high and inside. And draw a card. Pitcher selects ace pitch. So we've stopped the ace pitch. The pitcher can't execute it because we guessed both components correctly. The pitcher also can't modify the roll in any way. So that gives us a better probability of hopefully making contact with the ball. Strike 2. So we need to hot roll higher than a 2. So we are going to choose, we're probably going to choose the MVP ability, but let's see what we get. We rolled a 5. A 5 is higher than the S control row, so we make contact. So we've hit the ball. Hit and run. No rerolls. We didn't reroll. We didn't even modify anything. Lead runner gets one unopposed roll during the run phase. So we're going to use the MVP ability. Lead runner, which is going to be Mike, gets one unopposed roll during the run phase. That means that usually both the pitcher and the batter would roll their control and swing die simultaneously, and the first person to get a 5 or 6, which is a success, will actually win the run, which means that if the batter wins, the Meeples will advance 1 around and abouts. And if the pitcher wins, that means he struck out, not struck out, that means he threw out the batter. So 1 unopposed roll. And Mike makes it to first base. So now we are closer to scoring a point. So we reset this counter. We give the pitcher some relief. Now, Notice that Weaver's trait mentions relief. Mentions fatigue. Because it mentions fatigue, and because the fatigue abilities are too difficult to implement in an AI, at least an AI this simple, we simply give him +1 relief between batters. In order to calculate the amount of relief that the pitcher gets, count the number of uncovered bases. So in this case, that's 1 relief. And also add 1 relief for each mention of a fatigue in the trait. Well, if the trait mentions a fatigue, give them +1 relief. So he gets 2 relief. Now, if the bases had been loaded, he didn't have a fatigue mention in his trait, he would not get any relief at all. So the deck is already thinned out. We can see what we shuffle in. We shuffle low and inside, and unfortunately, they predict both incorrectly into the deck. So at this point, it's very much a matter of playing probabilities. So usually I have the first batter kind of be a sacrificial lamb. Sorry, Mike Fitz. So that we can thin out the deck a bit and see what happens. So choosing your lineup is pretty important to mitigating your luck. Our next batter is Pete Schmidt. Pete Schmidt has iron grip. If you rolled a 1, 2, or 3, you may flip the swing die to the opposite face. So that means that, if he does the MVP, he can do 4, 5s, and 6s. I've noticed I haven't used Mr. Fixer's ability at all. I think I just won't use his ability because that complicates things. So I want to keep this demo game as simple as possible. So B. Weaver, if it ever gets to the point that he's completely fatigued, we replace him with a new pitcher from the deck. But he's not completely fatigued yet, so we are going to do our guesses now. For Pete Schmidt, we are going to guess low and inside. Da, 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 da. High and inside. This is kind of bad. So, inside was guessed correctly. Low was incorrect, so it's high, so the pitcher gets that. However, notice that the pitcher did pitch high and inside. High and inside matches their ace pitch. And because according to this card, the pitcher always activates their ace pitch, that pitch is activated. So the ace pitch for B. Weaver says that it's a gyro ball. A swing result of 3 or 4 is a strike. So let's see what he rolls. So he rolls S5. That's pretty good. So he activates his ace pitch ability, and the batter is going to do their best to roll a 6. And he rolls a 6. So he makes contact with the ball. Future Ava here to tell you that the card is a little wrong because S6 was achievable instead of S5. It should have been S6 there. What we should have done is increase the control die to 6 and not use the ace pitch. Also, that natural roll of 6 actually crushed that hit. So we should have followed crush rules, but we didn't. And unfortunately did not fatigue the pitcher as much. So let's do some rolling. Because he doesn't have an unopposed roll, both players roll the dice at once. So a 5 was rolled by the runner. So now, runners advance. And we're one step closer to winning the game. This guy just needs to get home, and then it's a done deal. So the pitcher doesn't get any relief from the bases because they're all loaded, but he does get +1 relief from the fatigue mentioned in his trait. And now we've got Carrie Rumble. Carrie Rumble's MVP is Choke Up. Speed +1, and Rumble loses her trait this swing. Her trait is that Carrie crushes on tied strike 5s and tied contact 6s. All other contact attempts are fouls. So, yeah. Oh, the difference between a foul and a strike is if a foul, so fouls usually count as strikes unless they are the third foul or strike. If the third foul or strike is a foul, the batter is not out until they actually get struck out for legit reals. Baseball, it's funny. So Carrie Rumble is going to guess low and inside. High and away. Okay. That was not great. Pitcher rolls. B and 4. So any two red or any two white. So B4 means that we re-roll the pitch die. So re-rolling this and hoping for an S or C. We get a second re-roll because we chose to re-roll, so we get 2 re-rolls. And we get an S. We don't have any further modification abilities because it was only red times 2 or white times 2, and we chose white. So yeah. So now she needs to roll higher than a 4. Okay, so let's see if she does that without any modifications. 6. We definitely need to cover crushing at this point since I've forgotten it twice. So crush, if you roll a natural 6 on your swing die against an S pitch, that is no modifications at all, you can roll again. Well, you do roll again. And if you get a second 6, it's a home run. If you get a 5, it's a double. And if you get a 4 or 3, it's a single. In all of those cases, you don't have a run phase. You just automatically advance bases. And on a 1 or 2, you just do the run phase as normal. That's all there is to it. So, yeah, we totally crushed the other team. So she hits, and she did not get her MVP, so her speed is not increased by 1. So basically, speed +1 just means that she'll succeed on 4s, 5s, and 6s instead of just 5s and 6s because she adds 1 to her run roll. Okay, but she doesn't have that. So let's see if she makes it onto base. She doesn't have speed +1 because her MVP didn't go off. So we do this again. And no one rolled a 5 or 6, so we do it again. She rolled a 6. And so, by the way, if this had been a 5, so basically both success, because her die is higher, she wins the roll-off. If this had also been a 6, she wins the tie. So now the runners all advance. La la la. This guy goes home, and we've scored our single point that we need to win. So we've won in the 9th inning instead of having to go to the 10th inning. As you can probably tell by now, I am not a natural when it comes to the sport of baseball. I am still learning what everything means, and that means that I forget what everything means, so the mapping from game to board game doesn't always work out for me. However, I very much enjoy this game despite that. It captures the feeling of the ninth inning very well, as far as I can tell, being a newbie to baseball and all that. I think that even though there is luck in the way that you have to guess what the pitcher is going to pitch, there's mitigation there because as the pitcher becomes fatigued, it becomes easier and easier to guess what's going to happen. Because of this, and because of all the special abilities that abound all and around, it is quite easy to mitigate a lot of the luck. Not all of the luck. Some things are still going to remain lucky, like actually crushing the ball into a home run. That's a pretty lucky event. But that just means, that brings in the big plays without having the big plays overtake the rest of the game, you know? And I really like that about this game. It's a fun little game. If you're not into a very light game though, with quite a few special powers, then this isn't for you. But if you like special powers and you like baseball and you like dice rolling and you like mitigation of luck and all that stuff, then this game is for you. I actually find it sometimes a little more concrete than Baseball Highlights 2045, which is why it is actually ranked higher for me right now on my top 100, so to say. But I think that I don't know if it'll have staying power or not. It depends a lot on what Dice Hate Me Games / Greater Than Games does with this board game, like what kind of expansions they're going to release. If this is all the expansions there are, then I think that I will enjoy this game for the time I have it with me and then ultimately trade it away. But it remains a very fun filler, and I don't have many sports games that are actually this size of a filler, so it may stay around just because of that. So anyways, those are my thoughts on not Baseball Highlights 2045. These are my thoughts on Bottom of the Ninth. And remember, if you like my work and like my videos and want to see more of them more often, please consider pledging to my Patreon. You can start for as little as $2 a month, and I will just keep pumping these videos out. There are varying levels of Patreon tiers, anything from voting on the next game to be covered to actually dictating what game should be covered. To pledge, just visit my Patreon page and choose the Uwe Rosenberg game of your choice. Thank you very much.